when video games were simple. It's by Bisley channel. So I never watched any of his videos before, but we're gonna check this out. So yeah, check it out with me. Let's go. All right.
Do you ever think back to when video games were just simple? When games could just be games, and you could be an idiot 6-year-old who can't figure out how to get off the starting island in Kingdom Hearts. Yeah, you actually, you gotta hit the...
I think it took me like 3 months to get off of Destiny Island when I was a kid. I literally was stuck there. I had no clue what to do. That's the crazy part. And me and my brother were both playing this game. I think we got to like a really high level fighting Riku and what's his name? The guy with the ball. I forget his fucking name. But we were fighting them so much that we like were leveling up on the island for a minute because we just didn't know what to do to get off the island. And I remember when we finally beat the game, it was just so amazing. We cried. We cried. Yes, this is that good of a game.
Tree to get the coconuts. The coconuts will fall down. Hit it. Yeah. It feels like back then they could just make...
That was the greatest game of my generation, I feel like, on PS2. The greatest game on PS2 to ever come was Kingdom Hearts 1. It's still one of the greatest games. 1 and 2 were probably the best ones.
Anything they wanted to. Studios took chances, building experiences that, while not perfect, were still iconic. And don't get it twisted, all right? I like the AAA games we're getting right now. I'm definitely not saying that video games aren't fun anymore. But I can't help looking back at all these older games and missing the charm that they all had, especially compared to now. They definitely weren't all fantastic, but when I look back at them, they all just seem so whimsical and wonderfully simple to me. And sure, you know, that opinion is probably largely shaped around nostalgia, and it's more likely I miss the simpler times in my life, which we'll talk about nostalgia more towards the end of the video, but I do mean this literally. I adore the simplicity of the games from this era. When I talk about a time when video games were simple, I think a different time period probably comes to each of our heads, right? For you, it might be the PS1, or even the Atari if you're ancient and decaying. For me, I think of the PS2.
All those games. What the fuck? Hold on, where is it? I had all those games.
And just all those classic games from that console. Like Kingdom Hearts, Jak and Daxter, Sly Cooper, Ratchet and Clank, the weird game with the alien face on the cover that kind of...
I didn't have this game, but I had all the games you mentioned.
Freaked me out too much to pick up. The hundreds of stupid licensed games that came out around this time that were all just
My brother had Shrek 2. I never played Shrek 2.
Exactly the same, except that one.
I loved Hit and Run 2.
Of that one. When every game didn't have to be a groundbreaking cinematic masterpiece, and it could just be a fun game. One aspect I really admire about those PS2 games is that they seem to prioritize gameplay and fun over anything. Whereas anymore, it seems gameplay gets sidelined.
I think that's the downfall of games these days. They're not focused on gameplay at all, and it's like sad. It's really sad. They should really focus on gameplay way more and take risks and try new IPs that are going to be fun. Like, not everything has to be hyper-realistic.
And by the cutscenes in the story. The gaming industry has changed a lot over the years, okay? It's not your grandpa's GameCube anymore. We got esports teams and VR chat twerk-offs now. The Last of Us is a phenomenal game series that tells a familiar yet strikingly unique story and has some of the best character writing I've ever seen in a video game. Due to some not-so-careful redactions, we learned that on their latest entry, The Last of Us Part 2, Naughty Dog spent $220 million over the course of 6 years to develop the game. To put that into perspective,
should have redacted that shit in like PDF editor and not with a Sharpie.
They developed the first Crash Bandicoot game for $1.7 million. With that $220 million, they delivered on these stunning, cutting-edge graphics, as well as creating a gripping narrative and overall impactful experience. But when you play these games...
1.7 million, let's look how much that is in today. Look, this is 1. Wait, what's the year Crash Bandicoot? Yeah, let's look. Year Crash Bandicoot came out. So we got 96. So we got 1.7 million. 1.7 million. 1997 to now. Let's see. Okay, there we go. No, we gotta go. Let's go comma. Or let's go 0, 1, 7, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. So it's about 3 million. So yeah, it still was like a good budgeted game. Like that's still not a lot of money in today's standard. That's like 220 million for a game. They could have spent $3 million and probably made more money than having to spend that much fucking money. That's the crazy part.
It becomes abundantly clear that The Last of Us does not embrace its identity as a video game at all. The gameplay loop consists of you walking around slowly, looking at everything like you're in a museum. Maybe avoiding some...
Because they want cinematic, like, movie video games these days. People want cutscenes, and that's not true. I don't know why they think that the market wants more cutscenes. That's why the last Kingdom Hearts game, I think, was ass, because it was focused more on cutscenes than gameplay. And I just didn't like the gameplay loop. It was, like, the same on every fucking planet, and it didn't feel anything unique, and I didn't like that. I didn't even beat Kingdom Hearts 3 because I just didn't like the gameplay loop. It was boring. I got halfway through the game, I was like, it's just the same thing over and over again. So I just said, fuck it. I didn't even like the gummy ship thing. It just didn't feel like I wanted to spend time in that mini game either.
The mushroom zombies sometimes. And if you walk into an area with waist-height walls, you know some guys are gonna come out and try to shoot at you. The combat is passable at best, and over time just becomes a boring obstacle between you and the next cutscene. Yeah. It really is a shame.
Exactly how that's what I was saying about Kingdom Hearts. It feels like it was just an obstacle between cutscenes, and even the developers were saying in an article I read at the time, they were like, oh, you know, yeah, they wanted to focus on cutscenes because they thought that people liked cutscenes more, which is fucking ridiculous.
Shame, you know, because the world they've built is so beautiful to look at, but there's nothing to touch. I'm all for story in a game, but it should never take precedence.
It's like playing Fallout and you realize half the game is just a bunch of junk littered around like the fucking building models and shit, and there's nothing there to do at all in some of the places.
Over the actual gameplay. And hey, I'm a problem solver, all right? I'm here to help you, Naughty Dog. I'm gonna tell you exactly what you have to do to fix this problem. You go through a couple of levels.
Naughty Dog could have spent $3 million and made another Crash Bandicoot game that probably would have made him more money than this one.
You get us really hooked in, and then you give Ellie a fishtail, and you have her swim around and sing a really bad song with Ariel from The Little Mermaid. And the song's got to be really, really bad. Really, it's got to be horrible. No, you're right. You can't do that, okay? It's a serious game with a serious tone. We don't need to do any of that. You know, no game has ever retained its serious tone while breaking immersion slightly for the sake of fun. It's never been done. It's not going to happen, all right?
Every
Bad
Japanese
example.
game.
I'm sorry. Let's look at the Insomniac Spider-Man games instead. You know, they're wacky and less based in realism. They had a phenomenal story, except for the third act of the second game. I'm still pretty mad about that. Peter should have been Venom. I'm standing on that.
But the old school Spider-Man games were basically the same thing.
And the gameplay in the old
Spider-Man games. I mean, the cities didn't look as good.
They got it
cities didn't look as good, but yeah, you know, you could do this in the old games. But yeah.
Still pretty mad about that. Peter should have been Venom. I'm standing on that business. And the gameplay here. Oh my God. They got it perfect. They did it. They did what Naughty Dog couldn't do. Sometimes. I could web sling around the city all day, and they had their Little Mermaid moment with Venom and I guess Mary Jane now. That was all right. But what I want to talk to you about specifically are the mini games. You know, those little moments where it's like, oh, Peter's a scientist.
Oh, yeah.
Here's some scientist stuff. Match up these different colors and lines because he's a scientist. It's science stuff. Those have got to be the worst mini games ever made. And Insomniac knows it, because why else would they give you an option to skip them? It's all right, whatever. They didn't come up that much in the first one. I can get over it. At least I got to skip them and move on. Maybe they'll take them out by the second one. Wrong. It's different this time. Now it's in 3D and you got to take out the bad shapes.
We know the last mini games and the last game was shit. Here, let's see if we can do it better and just keep it in the game. So stupid.
It's worse. It's somehow so much worse in this one. And I know it's a relatively small problem to point out, but man, just situations like this just make me miss games like Sly Cooper that would put you in a submarine and say, there's crabs coming to steal the treasure. You have to shoot all the crabs and make sure they don't come get it. They didn't bother trying to make it make sense within the story.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's true.
They just made something fun. I don't think every AAA game needs to be goofy, but I do think that video games are at their best when they embrace their identity as video games and deliver experiences only they can.
Yes, it's a video game. Don't try to make it realistic. Just make it a video game.
They really went in this direction because these cinematic games have the most wide reach. They don't really want to risk it with something that might not appeal to everyone, right? We could never get an insane concept like Kingdom Hearts made today. The idea of taking these two insanely different franchises, Final Fantasy, a JRPG series, and the Disney multiverse and mashing them together in some big world-hopping adventure led by a character nobody's ever heard of. That is just not something we would get.
It's an amazing game. Like, if you haven't played Kingdom Hearts, play it. At least the first one.
Today. And do you know how this idea came to be? Well, apparently back in the 90s, Square Enix and Disney both had offices in the same building. And one fateful day, an employee from Square Enix and an employee from Disney just so happened to end up in the same elevator. And they got to talking and they were like, "Hello, Disney employee I just met. Wouldn't it be cool to mash up our universes together and then send some kid around them beating everything up with a key?" And that, kids, is how Kingdom Hearts really came to be. I read it on nextshark.com, so you know it's true.
Oh, yeah. I mean, yeah, I guess you read it on Nextshark. Shit, okay.
If there ever was a video game that embraced its identity as a video game, it is goddamn Kingdom Hearts. This game makes no sense, but it's so much fun. Why the hell is Cloud from Final Fantasy making a deal with Hades and fighting in the hero games on Olympus? I don't know, who cares? I'm Sora and I'm gonna hit this big dog with a key I found. When you travel between the different Disney worlds in Kingdom Hearts, sometimes the art style, the character designs, and even entire gameplay mechanics will change based on where you go. I keep referencing the Little Mermaid level in Kingdom Hearts because genuinely when I played this, it was so mind-blowing to me. I love that even at a point so deep into this game, they were still willing to...
I hated the Ariel level. Yeah, mind-blowing, but I hated it.
Change the fundamental mechanics of how you play it just to keep things fresh. And don't even get...
Every world felt like a new gameplay. It was just such an amazing game.
Get me started on the goddamn Gumi ship. I don't know if it's...
I think PlayStation 2 was the peak of gaming, to be honest. GameCube and PlayStation 2 were like... You had everything you could ever ask for in gaming at that time, to be honest. That's how I feel. Obviously, you gotta have Nintendo. So, the kids, like, exclude Nintendo. You know, it's like half of the game industry, it feels like, to me at least. It's like Nintendo and everything else. But if you owned a GameCube and a PlayStation 2 as a kid, you were winning. You were winning everything. You played every fucking AAA hit banger at that time.
Gumi or Gummy.
Greatest time for gaming. Nowadays, it doesn't feel anywhere near the same, and it's weird.
I've been saying Gumi. When I first played it, it was kind of annoying at first. I was thinking, why am I doing this? But now, anymore, I'm traveling between the worlds and I'm up in the Gumi ship. I'm just shooting stuff. Why the hell do they need a spaceship to get between the Disney worlds? I don't know why they thought they needed a spaceship.
But guess what?
It was awesome.
It was fun.
And it was the Gumi ship. And shut the fuck up. I'm not entirely sure if this is the case, but it really seems to me like when games were cheaper to make, studios were willing to make pretty much anything and just throw it out there. And listen, I was eating it up. I love sitting down crisscross applesauce on the floor of a GameStop, just going through the wall of so many different PS2 games, picking out insane shit like Marvel Nemesis, Rise of the Imperfects. I feel like I dreamed this. Sure, they were goofy and didn't exactly maximize profit, but does that mean they weren't worth making? I guess where AAA is concerned, it's just always going to be...
Yeah, they don't have to fit it on a CD no more. You just have to fill up your hard drive so they can do all the crazy shit they want.
If you want a passionate game developer, you look to the indie games. There's got to be some video essay YouTuber to indie game pipeline because I was never really that into indie games, but recently I played Hades and Rollerdrome, and it was some of the most fun I've had playing games in a long time. Well, it seems the games that...
Indie games are pretty much the modern day PlayStation 2 games in 2024. It's like time traveling, you know, and it works.
Prioritize.
Like, this looks like something that would be on PlayStation 2.
Fun overall are only coming from indie developers anymore. There is a genre of game
like, this
that
looks like
lost
been
to
on
time
PS2.
completely. And that, my friends, is the shitty licensed games. This has got to be the greatest loss in my lifetimes. Those shitty early 2000s movie tie-in licensed games that came with every mildly successful property. If there was a cartoon you liked in the early 2000s, tie-in game. If there was a movie you kind of enjoyed, tie-in game. Look up any franchise that had moderate success in this time period and add the game at the end, and you're probably gonna get something. It would be impossible to count how many there were, and they were all bad, but I love them anyway. Like the Cat in the Hat movie tie-in.
That's how every Harry Potter game back then was. That's why I was so glad Hogwarts Legacy came out. Honestly, Hogwarts Legacy came out, and they shit on every other Harry Potter game they ever came out with. Granted, they were just like, you know, they're licensed games, so that's why. But I'm glad J.K. Rowling decided to make an actual game.
What a beautiful nightmare that was. Give me a bottle of Dayquil and the Cat in the Hat PS2 game, and I'm having a great week. If you've ever played one of these games before, you've probably seen this little intro screen.
Oh, yeah.
THQ.
THQ. I should just call it thick.
HQ was responsible for not all, but a lot of these tie-in games. It seemed their business model was to buy up the license for a mildly successful property, pump out a cheap, easy game, and launch it right when that movie or TV show was peaking in popularity so that they could feed off of that hype.
Yeah, so they get money. They make money. Just make a shit game, don't spend a lot of money on it, they make money on it.
It worked because in the span of a couple of years, they released literal hundreds of games. They hit the cartoons hard. They got Jimmy Neutron, Scooby-Doo, so much SpongeBob, Fairly Odd Parents, Tack and the Motherfudging Power of Juju. This one.
Tack and the Power of Juju, was that a movie?
One was a banger. Rugrats.
Wait, was that a show? Hold on. Wait, that was a show? Hold on, what? Yeah, that was a show.
Every Tuesday at Papa Murphy's, you can get any large pizza for just $12.99.
Oh, it was a fucking show. What the fuck?
Soccer is my life.
I'm not gonna watch it because I'll probably get copyright, but that's crazy. I was gonna watch the clip, but I don't get copyright strike for that shit. That's crazy. I didn't know it was a fucking TV show. I thought that was a game. But that was a banger. I had Tack and the Power of Juju. I'd never even seen the show, which is actually fucking mind blowing. Because I was always watching cartoons as a kid.
Barnyard, Danny Phantom, Avatar The Last Airbender. Seriously, so much SpongeBob. And they hit the movies too. Cars, The Incredibles, Ratatouille, Wall-E, Up. They had Star Wars under their belt, and Episode 3 was a slapper. These guys dominated the licensed tie-in games, and eventually they just stopped. I was looking around the internet trying to figure out why they stopped. You know, where did these go? And everything I found kind of suggested that they didn't stop making them, but they moved over to the more profitable sector of the video game market, the mobile games.
Yeah, hey, just was wondering, is this an out-of-season April Fool's joke? No.
And you know what? They were probably right to do so. Even I ended up spending money in Family Guy: The Quest for Stuff. I wanted to build my Quahog to look cool.
Holy fuck.
There were a lot of these games, and most of them were bad, but for every 100 shitty cookie-cutter games, there was one gem. Odds are, if you had a PS2, you probably played The Simpsons Hit and Run, which, by all means, should have just been another shitty tie-in in the series of shitty tie-ins. But
no, this was like the wholesome GTA.
This one just so happened to be amazing. It was a GTA clone that was like better than GTA. In fact,
I would say it was better than GTA. It was probably just as good as GTA.
Did the multiple characters, the character switching before GTA 5 did it. That means The Simpsons predicted GTA 5. It is time to write another Kotaku article. Some of my personal favorites were The Matrix: Path of Neo. I don't know why I liked this. I'd never seen The Matrix. I really was drawn to this game because it made me feel like insane. I don't know how to describe it. I loved the Star Wars Episode 3 tie-in game because it had this cool alternate ending, and I was obsessed with this fight on Mustafar between Anakin and Obi-Wan, and so being able to do that and get a different result just like blew my little mind. And obviously, Spider-Man 2. I think a lot of people forget this was a movie tie-in game. And even this one had great mini-games. The most iconic mini-game where you go around delivering pizzas with that insane music playing. Why couldn't we get that in Insomniac Spider-Man?
You were able to do this in the old Spider-Man games. I never played the new one, though.
Spider-Man, instead of match the shapes and colors. A licensed tie-in game that a lot of people liked was SpongeBob Battle.
Even the first Spider-Man game on PlayStation, which I played, I think you're able to web sling around the city. That was the whole point of it. It was a shit city, and you couldn't see the ground. It was just like you fall into nothingness. But it was cool still.
For Bikini Bottom, and I know a lot of people like this one because it got a big fat remake. We've established that the game studios are in this for the money, right? And it's safe to assume that they want the safest bets for their money, the most revenue with the least risk. No brainer. Why don't they just take things people already like and do it again? But like make it pretty. Personally, I think this aversion to risk is absolutely doing damage to the industry, but what do I know? I'm just a guy, and clearly the numbers say otherwise. But I think in all of this, the consumer is not blameless. It is me. I'm the consumer. They're only gonna do something if they know we're gonna buy it, and oh man, am I gonna buy it. I've been loving the remakes lately, I'm not gonna lie. I don't really think we needed 5 iterations of the 2 Last of Us games, but for example, like Resident Evil 4 remake, or the Dead Space remake,
those
or some of my favorite games in 2023.
Yeah.
They may have been remakes, yes, rehashing old ideas, but I felt like in those 2 examples specifically, they expanded the gameplay systems and made changes that honestly justified a remake. In Dead Space alone, the zero gravity overhaul was game changing, as well as a voiced protagonist where there wasn't one before. So they're not just throwing stuff out, you know, they actually do seem to care about some of these games. The Resident Evil 4 remake was a breath of fresh air for me because I got the quality of life from a AAA game, but the goofy, campy fun from a PS2 game. The graphics were stunning and the gameplay was tight and well optimized. And I also got to go up to the shady weapons dealer and buy a rocket launcher to just shoot the final boss with. I just cheesed the entire fight, and the game let me because it was more fun that way. The simplicity that I had been missing was right there, and I loved every second of it. To me, this trend,
it wasn't Elden Ring, you know, good cheese things.
Of remakes is proof that I'm not alone in missing a time when video games were simple, and it's also proof that nostalgia can and will be weaponized at any moment possible, and memories are only good if they are profitable. I am happy that younger generations, and just more people in general, get to experience these games that I loved as a kid and see why for themselves. And also I'm happy that we get to experience these games in ultra-realistic graphics, 4K level shrinking technology, only playable with the Gigafart 8500 graphic card. You may need to upgrade your PC to play this game. I can appreciate good graphics.
I need to upgrade your PC to play this game.
Looks pretty, but I think
I keep my shit on the cutting edge.
This looks better than
for the most part. I'm not on the cutting edge. I'm like a little bit below the cutting edge, you know. I need a new motherboard and processor, but my graphics card always stays up there.
This and this looks better than this. Technically, this has higher resolution and better lighting, but this has a better art direction. High resolution textures and pretty lighting are always going to be outshined by inspired art direction, creativity, and a focus on atmosphere. This isn't something that's gone from modern gaming. In fact, a lot of recent games have left my jaw on the floor because they're so beautiful. Bloodborne, and Bloodborne. Holy shit, Bloodborne. But I think it was more common to focus on art direction back then because they were limited. They couldn't make a realistic looking game. They had to do something unique. Even the games shooting for a realistic approach could not pull off realism. I mean, that is not realism, but still, it's iconic. A phrase I really like and I've used before in one of these videos is that limitation breeds creativity.
Innovation.
Trying to make
limitation breeds innovation, but okay, creativity works too.
Game back on the PS2, I imagine was extremely limiting, but it made them so creative, making these incredibly unique looking games. I often find that when creating something and you run into a problem, that solution that you come up with to the problem leads to an infinitely more interesting and unique final product. Like I said, we still get a lot of stunning games coming out lately, but I feel like now with the ability to actually create games that, while not perfectly realistic, look pretty damn real, that becomes the only focus, is making a game that looks realistic, not one that is creative in its visuals. In a lot of ways, I miss those older games that we used to get, but I'm also glad for all the games that we get now. Like Ghost of Tsushima is one of my favorite games of all time. And Baldur's Gate 3, which I made an entire video on, you should go watch it, was a phenomenal experience. Compare that to the PS2 Baldur's Gate Dark Alliance 2, and it's no contest there. The only reason I might want to pick up and play Dark Alliance 2 is because I miss playing it with my dad when I was a kid. I used to live in this big greenhouse right on the corner lot and had a baseball field right across the street. I think the house used to be a church.
He lived in the big greenhouse on the corner. That's the nice house in the neighborhood.
Was definitely haunted. I was 8 years old when that house caught fire. I remember I was watching SpongeBob and I walked into the kitchen and I saw these crazy flames up all over the place. Long story short, the house got completely ruined and my dad got hurt pretty bad. But he recovered fine. They just took some skin from his butt and put it on his hand. I call it his butt hand. This house though was mostly ruined and the property had a separate garage, like a barn kind of thing. And that garage had an attic. Well, my dad decided that we were gonna fix up the house ourselves and live up in that attic. Him and I shared this airbed up there, and right next to it was a projector that I had hooked up my PlayStation 2 and my original Xbox to. During the day, I'd obviously go to school, and then when I got home, I'd help him build however I could. You know, there wasn't much I could do. I was 8, but I remember doing things like helping him put up the ceiling or chip away at the old stone slate in the fireplace. And when we were done for the day, I would go up and play on that PS2 nonstop. Not to get into too much detail, I'm just some guy on the internet. You don't know me. But I was having a hard time. Something about swinging around the city in Spider-Man 2 just made it all melt away, you know? I wasn't Zach with all this stress and all these problems I didn't understand.
It's called nostalgia, buddy. We all have it. But that is a sad story.
I was Spider-Man. I can only imagine how my dad felt at the time. But he always seemed happy when him and I were playing a video game together. He was just watching me play one. But we had a ton of fun, and we would just laugh and hang out together playing Halo 2 on the Xbox, just going through the campaign. And it was in moments like that where it really felt like everything melted away. It didn't feel like we had just lost everything. You know, it felt like we had everything that we could ever need. And it's funny, now sometimes just hearing that PS2 sound, I'm back up in the attic with my dad. Nostalgia's a funny thing. It can make you look back fondly on things that might not have been so great, but were somehow perfect in their own way. And escapism through simple pleasures like video games will always be important. I think we all have that game or just media in general that was able to give us a break from a hard time in our lives and made us hold on to that experience forever. And so now we judge that media by what it did for us rather than what it actually is. I'd love to hear if there was anything like that that stuck with you, you know, either in a comment or send it to my email at this point. I don't care. I don't
know. I can't really like relate too hard to like a house burning down, but whenever I go through stuff I don't want to do, I'm a procrastinator. I would hop in a video game and just get balls deep into it. That's why I built a gaming computer and all this stuff, because that's my escape is video gaming whenever I'm going through tough times. And trust me, I've been through a lot of tough times. But yeah, I mean, I could totally relate to how like a video game can help you get through some stuff. And I think having a really good video game with gameplay or it's engaging that can help you like forget about your actual life is definitely needed in this day and age, especially today, 2024. Like, people need that kind of stuff. It helps them cope with certain things, or sometimes you can relate with a protagonist in a video game or learn life skills and learn actually coping mechanisms and learn about betrayal or love and trust and, you know, life things that you can learn in actual video games, shit like that. So shit, you know, it's kind of cool.
Promise I'll get back to you, but if you want to.
So I love video games. I think video games is like the best thing ever for that kind of stuff. I put thousands of hours of my life into video games, and I wouldn't take any of it back.
Shoot me an email. I might see it. Thank you so much for over 100,000 subscribers. Geek really likes the plaque, so that's good. We send it off to him. He's the real hero here. 100K is crazy. You know, I started another channel a while ago, and it took me so long. I was trying so hard to get to 100K. And with this one, I wasn't even trying. I just kind of did it. I mean, we did it, I guess. I don't know. That shit's cool. This is a cool thing to do. This is my simple pleasure now. So,
content is king, my friend.
Click the card right here and watch another video. This got way too sappy. click on some other funny shit, please. Okay, goodbye.
No, that's cool though. This is a good video when video games were simple. Yeah, no, true. Video games, the simple things sometimes are the best things, you know.